Small businesses are the backbone of our economy. We must promote small businesses, cause they are way more agile than large corporations. Small businesses are fundamental because they engage local economies by circulating money locally. Small businesses are contributing to 99% of the US economy. They are a great way to make them franchise and grow your business. Once your business is turned into corporation, you can start opening multiple other small businesses and avoid taxes. You can even start a private equity and buy out other small businesses in a bundle. You can actually start a chain.
And this is how commercial gentrification starts. Large corporations hold the monopoly of the market. They kill the urban landscape and they build spaces accessible for some target groups, not for the people. And because of this, there is a notion says that if we want to prevent the commercial gentrifications, we must stop all business activities and commercialization. No, it's a wrong assumption. In fact, we have to give a real chance to the small businesses, which today actually we don't do it.
Wait, what?
Well, a small business in the US is considered as an enterprise with a range of employees from 1 to 500.
Wow, what a precise classification. Here's the classification in the European Union, for example.
Micro enterprises, fewer than 10 employees. Small enterprise, 10 to 50 employees. Medium-sized enterprise, 50 to 250 employees. And large enterprise, 250 or more employees.
We are not saying that Europe is better or something like that. What we're saying is that using the term small businesses so loosely is completely misleading. It creates a narrative in which truly small businesses are denied a fair chance in a society that we like to call it equal opportunity-based society.
As a result, access to public and commercial spaces isn't distributed fairly or proportionally among entrepreneurs of different sizes. And what does that lead to? Divided cities, increased segregation, and ultimately the encouragement of gentrification.
Well, in this episode, we'll look at a case study that could inspire us to create areas resistant to gentrification by introducing a mix of commercial activities facilitated in a diverse architectural and urban typologies.
This behind me is a typical classical mall from a small scale. The exterior is well conserved and all the commercial functions are in the inside. This behind me is an open type mall. The facade is basically one big terrace filled with corridors and hallways, and inside you have the commercial activities organized along these hallways. And this over here is a classical green market where you basically can find vegetables and fruits. And these are informal selling stands where you can find different stuff, from little gadgets, vegetable, fruits, and God knows what. These types of commercial activities may be interesting but may not mean anything when they're separate. But they might have different economical and socio-political power when combined together.
First, let's define them individually and then explore the potential they're carrying along. Malls.
Typical mall, small scale as we said. On the ground floor you have this big market store. On the first and second floors you have different clothing stores and I don't know what. And then on the top of it you have places for entertainment for children and daily activities for kids.
Malls are by design mostly closed-off spaces. On the outside, they're often lined with cafes or bars to make the frontage feel more active. But because malls require huge areas for logistics, transport, parking and energy systems, large portions of the exterior remain shut off, creating a sharp divide between public and private spaces. Now, malls aren't exactly new. In fact, in Ottoman, Persian and Arabic cultures, there were covered markets which are often known as Bezistan, Bezistan or Betistan. Back then, the exterior almost always was surrounded by shops that faced directly onto public space, keeping things much more open and connected. Modern malls, however, are built for people who have a stronger sense of private space. Entrances are controlled and limited to just a few points of entry and exit. For affluent groups, this is not a problem, it's actually a feature. Surveillance and security are seen as a guarantee of a status. In the public domain, they might feel like a potential targets, but in the mall, they feel protected. Inside, the design speaks directly to wealthier shoppers. polished tiling, granite finishes, sliding doors, sensors and gadgets. All elements that mirror what affluent people already have in their homes. Add to that a temperature-controlled environment and you have a space tailored for comfort. Of course, less affluent groups also find value in malls. Older people can use them during uncomfortable weather. Kids can play inside due to increased safety and if it's raining outside. But still, try filming wearing the wrong clothes or hanging out too long on a bench inside the mall, and you might be asked to leave. That control resonates more with higher income groups. That's why malls are the natural choice for chains, multinational corporations and prestigious brands. And, depending on how divided a city or society is by class, malls can end up being seen either as inclusive spaces or as architectural symbols that reinforce social and economic divides. It is interesting to mention that while malls in some cities can be collectors of the middle class, wealthier people or entrepreneurials tend to buy apartments around these commercial centers. Consequently, the mall facilities require a lot of additional services, fees, paperwork, obligations, deposits and other formalities, which in fact makes them a hostile environment for small businesses, or rather say for micro-businesses. Open-air malls. Open-type malls are actually private investment, but they're publicly accessible for everyone. As you can see, the interior is mostly this kind of corridors and hallways, and it's kind of trying to make certain connection between two different spots, and this concept was well introduced in the southern parts of Europe, at least we think so. And then mostly after that, you generally speaking have this kind of central squares inside the open type malls where it can be placed temporarily used for different manifestations or different sort of other commercial activities, and of course connection between different zones of the city. Yes, another interesting type of mall is the open air mall, which is more common in warmer climates. Its exact form can really take different shapes depending on the place, but the basic idea is that the central communication zone belongs collectively to the surrounding businesses. They handle its maintenance, but it stays continuously open and directly connected to the public space. You can think of open-air malls as an upgraded version of traditional markets or bazaars. While they host commercial activity, they also serve as transition points between different urban spaces. What's especially interesting is that this model often appears in societies or environments with less rigid class divisions. In this type of malls we can find a mix. Well-known brand stores alongside small businesses, local offices, ateliers, everyday shops, grocery stores, butchers, second-hand shops, bakeries, and small restaurants. The key difference is governance. These spaces are managed as public domains, which means activities normally allowed in public areas are generally allowed here too, with far less surveillance or control compared to enclosed malls. Now, while these spaces might not be perfectly tailored to the preferences of high-income groups, they still attract them occasionally, especially when they're looking for something unique or useful. But for most people, open-air malls act as central hubs, where you can find everything you need on a daily basis, at almost any time of the day. In this way, open-air malls remain way much more accessible for micro-businesses. Startups and one-person businesses or two-person businesses can easily acquire a location for their business in a popular space, frequent with customers, and still aim for an opportunity to reach higher income buyers.
And as you know, as always, we are promoting our book, The Urban Revolution as a Fun Sketch. And right now I'm holding a book that's almost an year old. Okay, this is the paperback. And we've been using this as a model for presentations. And I just want to show you the quality of the book. Okay, so you can see this was so overused and the quality is still perfect. I mean, there is no a ripped page, there is no some cuts or some similar stuff. It is absolutely completely bended over the time, but still beautiful, perfect quality with plenty of knowledge in a simple way, explained knowledge. So you know the drill. You can find all our versions of the Urban Revolution as a fun sketch down in the description.
Next, green markets. And here it is important to distinguish between two types. Bio or organic markets usually run collectively by entrepreneurs, and traditional green markets where individual producers or small resellers run their own stalls. In these places, the ambient is lively and often chaotic. Fruits and vegetables are constantly picked up, touched, and tasted. Bargaining and casual conversations are part of the culture. Paying by card, usually not an option, unless you're in China. Most of the time you just have to go with the flow. Sometimes you'll score fantastic deals, other times you might walk away with products that are not that fresh. Pricing isn't standardized either. Come early in the morning and you'll find higher quality goods, but at the higher prices. Come later in the day and you might grab bulk quantities for much less. In many ways, green markets are the purest form of free economy, where sellers with similar opportunities compete openly for a better revenue. Ironically, neoliberals of today's society don't really like and appreciate these spaces. Still, the whole vibe of green markets stands in contrast to the modern idea of urban tranquility, a feature more favored by middle and higher income groups. And that's why open green markets are often not their cup of tea. Informal selling stands. Finally, we have the free random stands, the kind of setup you'd see at a flea market. Here people sell anything from food to gadgets to second-hand items. It's basically the pure grey economy. For some it's about survival, for others it's just a hobby, a way to make a little extra cash, or simply a way to spend the day. What's fun is that at these places you can find surprisingly interesting stuff as a second hand. Which, to be honest, this is in fact circular economy. But of course, these informal spaces are not exactly favored by affluent groups of people. To them, they often feel messy, unreliable, and even like a scam. Now here comes the secret sauce. If we look at our case study from an aerial point of view, you will see that all of these urban typologies that we have just mentioned are actually connected among each other. We have a small-scale typical mall, and across the boulevard connected with an open-air type mall, which ultimately leads to a green market. On top of that, the stand sellers appear occasionally in between spaces, adding another layer of vibrancy. This is an urban pattern that should be well studied as an anti-gentrification policy.
To some extent we get it. People with different incomes often feel more comfortable in environments that reflect their own social class. But here's the thing. People from different social backgrounds often do want to experience the space of more affluent groups of people and vice versa. And we're not really making an effort to create common places that bring these groups together. As you can see, each type of commercial space tends to attract specific groups of people. If we keep these spaces separated and far apart, we actually increase the potential for segregation and fuel uneven development. And with uneven growth comes class dominance. We've talked about this before. In capitalist societies, capital has a natural tendency to expand. Spaces that generate more revenue eventually push out those that generate less.
That's why maintaining a variety of commercial typologies and designing architecture that supports diverse kinds of businesses is so important. It makes different economies more dependent on one another and helps normalize diverse urban spaces for all users, reducing misunderstandings and social divides. In this kind of setup, businesses of different sizes can find a place that matches their budget while staying close to diverse customers and opportunities. Smaller shops and services also get the chance to remain accessible to higher income earners, improve their practice, grow their income, and anchor themselves in the community by building a stronger sense of identity. In this way, many services can act as bridges between people of different income levels, helping cities become more connected, inclusive, and resilient. But here's the thing, even if we keep different types of commerce close together and encourage diversity, there is another factor we can't ignore: housing policies. Around these commercial areas, We need housing strategies that maintain a steady balance between low-income residents, the middle class, and high-income earners. Without that balance, the diversity we're aiming for won't last. Take a look at this aerial map of the commercial zones we just discussed. They are surrounded by neighborhoods where about 80% of people own their homes and around 70% fall into the average income group relative to the area. And for now, that's exactly what guarantees the balance we've seen here, and this is the situation for almost 2 decades now. Don't forget to become a collector of our City Secrets deck and own this kind of knowledge in your pocket. You can find all the details on our Patreon.
And as always, let's wrap up this episode with one of our reflection sketches. What we've learned so far is that it can be really powerful to combine different commercial typologies and then carefully manage the influence of the financially dominant groups. Now, the key example we've looked at here is the open-air mall. We're not saying that this is the ultimate model that we must always use, but it does represent the kind of common ground infrastructure we should be aiming for. Spaces that provide a comfortable, recognizable experience for different social groups. Take a look at this sketch. On one side you have a mall and on the other one a green market. They feel separate, even alien to each other, but the open-air mall could actually serve as a bridge between these two realities. And once that bridge is built, it creates a spatial fabric where temporary flea markets and second-hand commerce can naturally appear. That's not weakness, it's a strength. In fact, embracing circular economy practices like second-hand stores and using them as a fabric of the space is something we should encourage. If designed, maintained and governed well, open-air malls can provide spaces that are decent, stylish, popular and inclusive, where safety comes not from heavy surveillance, but from social presence and interaction. They may not guarantee perfectly equal development, but they do preserve equal spatial potential, and that's one of the most important steps in building gentrification-resistant areas. Now, what is equal spatial potential? We'll talk about that in some other episodes. And for today, it was enough. We hope that we've learned something more, and if you know some similar study case to this one, please write it down in the comment, subscribe, share, and keep stripping the architecture of your cities and revealing the urban phenomena that are operating in the background. Bye-bye.